Good morning. Welcome to our webinar this morning. I'm Nicole Andre. I'm the chair of the Midwestern Pavement Preservation Partnership. I'm with the Saskatchewan Ministry of Highways, and I just want to welcome everyone today to our webinar. We're going to be talking about scrub seals today. This is the second in our webinar series, Skillshare series. So the intention of these webinars is to collect some best practices, have a bit of a presentation from the folks that are going to be talking to us today on our roundtable panel. They have a few things to share with us on what's going on in their agencies, and then we'll just open it up for questions. So at any time during those presentations, just feel free to pop some questions into the chat, and then we'll have a moderator that'll get those questions asked. Before we start, I have a quick poll for you. So if you can just select from the poll there, if you're with state or provincial agency or local agencies, just so we get an idea of who's joining us today, that would be great. And then we'll get into it. So before we start with our roundtable, we have John Singer's going to give us a bit of an update on what's happening within the partnership with our research task group. So I will hand it over to John.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, so I'm not sure how many people are aware, but Federal Highways just recently published the research roadmap for pavement preservation. And I think that's going to kind of help guide our document and where the research task force wants to take things. But we will always be open to additional ideas and thoughts on what needs to be researched in pavement preservation and what's important to the states. So we are looking to put together a meeting here in the next couple weeks. And it looks like the Southeast Pavement Preservation Partnership is wanting to join our ranks and help us put together some stuff and kind of organize thoughts and get research need statements out so that we can get as much research as we can for pavement preservation. So the date that I am looking at for the next meeting would be May 2nd, probably the morning of May 2nd. What I will do is send out a meeting invite to the Midwest Partnership folks that have agreed to participate in the task force, and then I'll have Patty send out that same meeting invite to the Southeast Partnership as well, so we can get everybody on board and talking and get some work done before we need to turn in the research need statements to AASHTO Comp later this year. So does anybody have any questions on the task force or want some additional information? You could throw your questions in the chat box and Bill can let me know if anything comes in. The other thing that the Midwest Partnership does as far as task force is the data task force, where we collect unit costs for the various treatments and things like that. And Francis Toddy retired at the end of the year, so I'm kind of helping the partnership by stepping in for Francis and leading that for the time being until we can find another chair to take over. But I do think it's important that we meet here soon, just kind of get an idea of where things are at. If we need to collect some more data from the states this year, we probably need to send out the request for data for 21. But I do believe the Southeast was hoping to join in on that one as well. So hopefully we can make this data task force more of a national effort and really kind of build out a database of unit costs for the various treatments, and so it makes it a little easier to peek over the fence at what your neighbor's doing and how well their program is going out. So If anybody has any questions about either one of these task force, I'd be happy to answer them now. I will stay on the webinar and answer anything if there's questions later down the road as well. Phil, if we're ready to roll, that's really all I've got on my end.
Thanks, John. Now we'll enter the main portion of this webinar with our panelists. At today's panelists, we have Tyler Hunt from Michigan DOT, Brent Dankert from Tuscola County, Michigan, Clint Bryan from Indiana DOT, and Mo Rahman from Oregon. As I chat, would Patty go ahead and fire up the first presentation? We have the first person on my list is Mr. Hunt, Tyler Hunt. Tyler Hunt works for, as I mentioned, Michigan DOT. He currently is the Capital Preventive Maintenance Engineer at their construction field office. And Tyler, why don't we go ahead and send it off to you?
Thanks, Phil. Can you see my scrub seal presentation here then? Just wanted to double check.
Yes.
Very clear.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the introduction, Phil. Again, my name is Tyler Hunt from the Michigan DOT. I am currently the Preventive Maintenance Program Engineer at MDOT, and I'm going to be going over scrub seals today. And basically MDOT's experience with scrub seals to date. I know many are familiar with scrub seals, probably on this call, but I'm hoping that I can just give a brief overview and then we can jump into what MDOT has found. So scrub seals, for anyone on the call who isn't familiar, is essentially a chip seal, except the distributor truck pulls a set of brooms that scrub the emulsion into the pavement surface. So as far as MDOT's concerned, that's really the primary difference between the two. We'll get into some of the more details in a minute, but that's essentially it. And the idea is to have benefits of a chip seal, but also to fill those cracks in one operation, rather than having to do a lot of pre-treatment. It's really designed to improve pavements with the alligator cracking, block cracking, raveling, and surface deterioration. So that mat's starting to get broke down and you're kind of questioning whether a chip seal makes sense. A scrub seal can kind of fit into that, that niche. It's right now, MDOT uses a highly polymerized rejuvenating emulsion also that kind of wakes up the surface and brings those oils to the surface, softens the surface, and also acts as emulsion to help with chip embedment. Excuse me. You can use scrub seals as a standalone treatment or as an interlayer. And just want to emphasize, I'll probably be saying this a lot in this presentation, but it's not a replacement for a standard overband chip and fog seal application in MDOT's opinion. But the scrub seal has a use where the distress is too severe or the cracks are too numerous for a standard overband treatment. And we're hoping that scrub seals can bridge the gap between a mill and fill and a chip seal. MDOT currently has a standard specification for rejuvenating scrub seal, is what we call it. Our emulsion is called SSEA. It's slightly different than our chip seal emulsion. It has a rejuvenating agent in it, but our aggregate that we typically use is a 34 CS, or the same as the MDOT chip seal ag. The chip seal aggregate MDOT uses 34 CS. I'm guessing many use a similar ags nationwide. I'm not exactly sure, but a lot of those chips fall in between the 3/8 and number 4 sieve. So I just want to give everyone an idea of the size. And our slag is typically sourced from down in Indiana. It's a steel mill down in Indiana. It's shipped up to typically our lakeside aggregates in Utica, Michigan, and that's where our aggregate is sourced. Here's a shot of one of our operations from pavement maintenance systems a few years back, doing a scrub seal. You can see the distributor truck pulling the scrub seal or the brooms up ahead there, and then it's just a standard chip operation with the drop into aggregates. So now we're going to kind of get in the meat of my presentation here. We did a pilot back in 2017 on M20 in Michigan to pilot scrub seals and have a look at how the treatment works. As you can see in the left photo there, the pavement had a lot of working, well, you don't see in that photo, but had a lot of working cracks, traverse cracks, and then in that photo there's a lot of block cracking going on. We also had a chip seal control section that was 14 miles long, and we did 6 miles of scrub seal emergent technology, we call it, in Michigan treatment. So, and a big caveat of this job, which I'll allude to later, is our scrub seal did not get an overband pretreatment, which is normal for our chip seals at MDOT, and we've been monitoring the performance since 2017. In this pilot project, we used 2 different emulsions for the scrub seal. We used the SSEA and then another emulsion, the CRS SS. This SSEA was much thinner. I'll get to that in a second, but the standard chip seal control with our standard emulsion and standard aggregate, and then the entire project, the chip and the scrub seal, received a fog seal treatment at the end. And there you can see a breakdown in our unit prices for the different treatments. So scrub seal came in about $1 more across the board, but that did not include the $4,200 per lane mile of overband crack treatment in the chip seal price. So the chip seal came up with that, and then we had a 40 cents per square for a fog seal on the project. So some observations during construction of our M20 scrub seal pilot. The SSEA emulsion, what we call a type C, had much lower viscosity and ran off the pavement. You can see it in that right photo. So this was something they were battling pretty much the entire project. And then the CRS SS emulsion on the left, it was similar to our standard chip. It stood up on the surface well and didn't run off. And just a note that the centerline corrugations were skipped on the scrub seal portion of the project. But the SSEA, yeah, was real thin. So we ended up having to dial that application rate back. So we did end up popping some cores on our cracking and elsewhere on the project to kind of study the differences between the 2 treatments. What we found for the most part was that the scrub seal surface texture, aka the friction, was similar to a chip seal. The cores indicated that the scrub seal emulsion penetrated from about 3/4 of an inch to 1.39 inches. And in my opinion, the emulsion crack penetration was all right. It was adequate. It wasn't too intense where it really soaked up into the entire top course of the pavement, but it penetrated well. Here's the cores from the scrub seal portion of the project. We took these at working cracks and other cracks, and you can see in the broken cores the penetration of the emulsion into the surface. So there's the lines of the penetration, and you can see from the top of the core the crack didn't get fully filled by the emulsion, certainly. And just remember that these cores did not get overband pre-treatment. So in our next set of cores here, this is the chip seal control. These did get the overband pre-treatment, but the core held together, and you can see the overband pre-treatment and filling the crack. So we had much more cohesion. And this control section, we had a previous chip seal interlayer, but yeah, you can just see it in these. You can see in these photos how that pre-treatment, what that really does, and how important and crucial that is for the job. So some of our lessons learned on M20. When selecting a scrub seal, crack type is crucial. Working cracks and block cracking reflected through within a year on the scrub seal portion. So we were right back kind of to square one as far as the surface cohesion. And in MDOT's opinion, if you're doing a scrub seal, your working cracks should get an overband pre-treatment, even if you're doing a scrub seal. And then we kind of decided afterwards, this was an after the fact thing, lesson learned that scrub seal probably wasn't the ideal fix for this project. There's probably too much deterioration in the pavement to expect the scrub seal to fill all those voids, but it's still a tool in the toolbox. But again, it doesn't stand in as a replacement for chip seals in most situations. And last year, we did another scrub seal up in our Upper Peninsula at our Crystal Falls TSC. We think this is a more ideal candidate for scrub seals. You can see in the mat, the crack type, it's really thin cracks, frequent cracks. There's a lot of voids in the mat. This was an HMA only pavement, whereas the M20 was a composite pavement. And there's those fine cracking with minimal working cracks on this, which leads to the cracking being way too dense to consider overband on this route. And like I said, the mat has those voids. We'll have another shot in a second, but the mat has lots of voids to accept that emulsion being broomed into it. Here's another couple of shots. This is on a great day. We had snow melt and salt, but you can see the voids in that left shot there in the pavement. A lot of stone stood up on the surface, and a lot of area for that emulsion to be scrubbed into. And then you can also see the alligator cracking is pretty severe on some of our lanes on this route. So haven't been up. We're doing a review on that job this year and seeing how it turns out. So we'll have some updates on that, but we believe this candidate was much more ideal than the M20 job. So with that, so final thoughts as far as MDOT's concerned with scrub seals. Our dues, from now on, I think all of our working cracks are going to get pre-treatment if we're doing a scrub seal or not. There's just too much benefit with overband to not do it on a scrub seal and hope that emulsion can do all the work. And then use on pavements with block cracking if you have a lot of block cracking, and overband would just be not feasible to put down that much overband. If you have block cracking, that scrub seal is a good fix to consider in that scenario. And one of the big ones, as I alluded to earlier, was setting up test sections to get that emulsion rate established early and maintain the highest level possible. So what we were seeing was the emulsion rate get dialed down and dialed down and dialed down until it's like we're at a point where the emulsion, we're not getting the benefits of the seal. And so we want to maintain that highest level possible to get those oils down and preserve our pavements is the ultimate goal, right? So, and make sure your emulsion has low enough viscosity. So this is the caveat. The emulsion has to do a lot of work in the scrub seal. It needs to have low enough viscosity to fill the cracks, but it also needs to stand up and be similar to a chip seal to accept the stone embedment. So you're having your emulsion do lots and lots of tasks on these projects. So dialing in the emulsion, get the emulsion right is crucial. Some of our don'ts, I think we're going to avoid composite pavements for scrub seals in the future. I think there's just too much working cracks for them to make sense over a standard chip. Since we need to be out there overbanding those anyways, you kind of lose the benefits of brooming those into the cracks. So HMA only pavements from now on to see how it goes. And then don't think the emulsion will do it all. You need to pick the right project for a scrub seal. And we are going to avoid highly distressed pavements, basically with a lot of fatigue cracking. I think there were some considerations that scrub seals could kind of fill that void and be used as a preservation surface treatment to fill highly distressed pavements, and we don't think that's the case. And again, don't allow the emulsion rates to be adjusted too low. So with that, I hope I didn't go too long. There's my contact info. I like talking about this stuff and discussing it with other states and with Canada. So if any folks want to get a hold of me, please feel free. And I guess if there's any questions for me.
I'll go ahead and have all the questions for the end there, Tyler. I appreciate it. Well done. Well done. Next on the agenda, we have Brent Dankert, and Brent has a plethora of experience starting in 2001, many projects, including several interchanges in I-75. He currently got a range of skills from standard design bid build to bid build and design build. Brent's currently acting county engineer for the Tuscola County Road Commission. For those who want to know where that is, it's near Saginaw, since the fall of 2018. Brent's going to bring us a county perspective. So with that, Brent.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it. As Phil mentioned, I'm the acting county highway engineer for Tuscola County Road Commission. And to go, sorry, spacebar muted me instead of changing the slide. There we go. Tuscola County, where are we located at? We're located in mid-Michigan. And to give you a little bit of information about our county to kind of see how it compares to where you guys are at. Our population is about 53,000, and we have just over 1,700 miles of public roadway that we take care of and are responsible for in Tuscola County. Of those 1,700 miles, we have approximately 1,000 miles that are paved surfaces. So that's our primary roadways and our local roadways. Inside our county alone, we have just over 200 structures over 20 foot, and with over 4,300 structures that are currently underneath 20 foot in size. At the Tuscola County Road Commission, we've taken an approach of a mix of fixes when it comes to capital preventive maintenance. And in preparation for this presentation about scrub seals, we went back and looked at how are we using these types of fixes and what's that type of consistency. So we've gone through, we utilize single chips, double chips, and scrub seals, all in combination as interlayers and as standalone surface treatments inside of the county. The Tuscola County Road Commission and our townships, we've had to get creative in how we improve and maintain our roadways, as some of the townships may only have 1 to 2 mills for road improvements, but that 1 to 2 mills doesn't come up with more than $100,000 a year, which doesn't even cover the cost of overlaying 1 mile of road with 1.5 inches of asphalt. Our capital preventive maintenance also includes cape seals, which we're trying this year for the first time, route and seal, and then overband crack sealing. But in the last 5 years, we've put down single chips, double chip, scrub seal, and interlayers on over 152 miles of roadway inside of our county. That actually accounts to over 15% of our primary paved surfaces. So when you look at the breakdown of how we actually divvied it out, each year, each one of those fixes is seeing anywhere from 5 to 15 miles per year, depending on the roads and their current condition. It's an investment that we made starting back in 2017, and we've continued to utilize is multiple different aspects to make sure we're making the most bang for our buck as we go through to improve the roads. But what we found very interesting when we went through and looked at this data regarding the scrub seals and these other CPM fixes is we've actually had a drastic change in our condition of our roadways. So our PASER ratings from 2018 to 2022, we've seen a decrease of our poor roads by over 100 miles. And our poor condition rating was at 62% of our roads were PASER rated between a 1 and 4. And now that value is currently sitting at about 52%. So we're seeing a huge benefit in extending the life of these pavements. I wanted to go through and talk about a case study that we had on Washburn Road. It's in Fremont Township. It's a local road, and it's approximately 3 miles long. The problem is it receives extensive traffic. For us, 1,600 vehicles a day is quite high, and it's a primary route to reach one of the campgrounds in the county. Yet the township, based on the condition of the roadway, the alligator, the block cracking that's all occurring out there, the road needed to be reconstructed. But the township didn't have $700,000 to go through and do it. And so we looked at going through, due to the cross section being pretty consistent and through that full route, we went and looked at putting a scrub seal and HMA patching on that project. And so in 2020, that road was scrub sealed and patched, and now we've gone through and we've maintained and we've extended the life of a road that should have been completely reconstructed. We pushed it down the line as the township continues to save up their money to be able to reconstruct it properly. And the township was very hesitant to go through. It was something new to them. They weren't familiar with the scrub seal. They weren't sure how it was going to turn out, but it is exceedingly performed better than expected. As Tyler was talking about, I utilize that a scrub seal is like glue. It's gluing the pieces of the road back together, trying to hold all those different pieces of the puzzle in one piece. Yeah. And what I have here is just a brief video going through the process, as Tyler did explain. We're laying the scrub seal lays the emulsion down at a heavy enough rate that the brooms on the trailer are rolling it forward, basically like you're squeegeeing your floor, pushing that emulsion into the cracks of the roadway, and then they're coming through just like a single chip to put the stone down, and then rolling that right back in. So what now in regards to the scrub seal, lessons learned, since we've been doing this now for the last 4 or 5 years, we've learned you really have to look at the road alignment. Are there a lot of vertical curves out there? Are there a lot of horizontal curves? When you start to get into those situations, that liquid is going to want to move. It's going to want to roll downhill if you have steep super elevations for your horizontal curves. You're also going to go through and it ends up becoming problematic as you're pushing the head of material in front of you. You also need to take into account your traffic volumes. We found that if we have large agricultural producers, large farms on some of the roads, typically in front of all those drives with all the turning movements and the truck traffic, the scrub seal isn't going to stay on the roadway itself. It's going to wear itself right off wherever there's the high turning movement. You also want to look at the cross section of the road too. Is it uniform? Do you have a good cross slope out there? If you're experiencing a lot of rutting, you're going to have a problem with the scrub seal because it's going to settle out into those ruts. And then as you place your stone's going to settle to the bottom, and all you're going to be left with is the emulsion at the top. And so we go through and we determine what roads we're going to go through and scrub. We're taking all those into consideration. You also want to make sure that you are preparing that roadway surface. If there's a lot of cold patch out there, we'll mill the cold patch out and we'll patch the road beforehand to go through, because if we put the scrub over top of the cold patch, the first area that the scrub seal is going to fail is right where that cold patch is. So we're spending a little bit extra to do the patching that's necessary to make sure that the scrub seal goes through and performs properly. We've been experiencing a good 5 to 7 year life extension when we're selecting the right project for the scrub seal. You also want to go through and look at your shoulders and whether or not you have vegetation. On some of these rural local roads, there's not enough traffic to keep the weeds down on some of the cracks. With some roads, you may see that they haven't been paved in 20 years, and for those 20 cars a day, it's just not enough to keep it out of there. But you got to take that into account, because otherwise you're going to be going right over through, and the next thing you'll have is the weeds popping right back through the scrub seal. It's about managing expectation though. And what we found is a lot of communities, they see this, but they don't really realize, why are you doing the scrub seal? We're doing the scrub seal to extend the life, to go through, to seal that road off, to go through and allow us to move forward into the future, just for the life expectancy of that road. But they go through and they see that it's noisier. Well, you painted it black when you put the fog seal on. Why does it not ride smooth? Well, it's not a asphalt road. It's a finished gravel surface on the top, but you got to go through and manage those expectations. And then we've gone through, we run 2 different scrub emulsions with our projects. We'll use the PASS emulsion, but we also use the SSEA that Tyler was talking about. And then we're typically running a 34 CSM aggregate. We've used natural stone, we've used limestone, and we've used slag. I think actually our slag that we predominantly get is coming from Canada. And my preference in the end is I actually prefer the slag itself better than the natural, better than the limestone aggregates. It's to me, it's a lot more durable. It's also got a better roughness surface as your final texture, and it's cleaner. We go through when we perform our quality control on the contractors. We're checking the drop rate of the aggregate, making sure they're staying within specification. We're also going through and verifying the emulsion application rates as they go through their project every day to make sure that we're getting exactly what's necessary. And with that, that's scrub seals in Tuscola County.
Well done, Brent. Well done. The next presentation, let's shift from the 46 degrees in the north, about 400 miles to the south, to a balming 57 degrees, and take you on a journey, a scrub seal journey in western Indiana. Clint is our next presenter. Clint currently is in part of INDOT, Indiana DOT, and is currently the maintenance highway director for the West Central District in Indiana. He's been there, of course, 18 years. Why don't you go ahead and take it from me, Clint?
Thanks, Phil. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the perspective from maybe in-house maintenance forces.
Clint, you're mute again.
Phil, Clint, we can't hear you.
Hey, we're back. I can
There
hear
we
you
are.
now.
Good.
I don't hear Clint, but I at least hear you, and I believe Mo. Everyone, we may have to switch unless Clint can get unmuted.
John, I can hear you. Patty, I can hear you, but not Clint.
Well, as always, we have to have some technical difficulty.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There we go. We're back.
Okay, should I just start over, or did anybody catch the first part?
I heard my name is Clint.
Okay. So let me go ahead and, sorry about that. So I'll go ahead and dive into this again. So I am the highway maintenance director, as Phil said, for West Central Indiana. There's about 5,000 lane miles that we maintain. About 250 to 300 lane miles a year we chip seal. A lot of the roads are lower volume roads. They go through a lot of smaller communities that we've typically avoided for a variety of reasons. And because of that, some of those roads are starting to see more severe cracking than obviously the sections that we've chip sealed up to the town. So we thought we would try scrub seal in some of these smaller communities because we thought it would obviously extend the life of the road without maybe being as impactful as a chip seal would be. So we started by building a plan. The first thing we looked at were the materials we wanted to use. Typically for our chip seals, we're using an SC16 crushed gravel and our AE90S emulsion. The crushed gravel is about 3/8 of an inch, but for the scrub seal, we actually wanted to kind of look at some other materials. So we looked at a QA13 crushed dolomite, which is about 4.75 millimeters or about 3/16 of an inch on the top side, and then an HFRS2P emulsion. So for our candidate selection, the first thing we looked at was some of these small towns. The reason we looked at them, obviously outside of the skipping them, sometimes they're difficult to secure funding for a mile section of road or a half-mile section of road for a small town. When we do our capital projects, obviously we have to bring them up to ADA compliance. So sometimes that makes it more difficult to secure that funding. Then from a PR perspective, sometimes when we go in, and I've said this many times, if we can do 10 jobs right, if we do one wrong, that's what people remember. And sometimes there's a fear of failure with going to these small communities. But we went ahead and took the dive a few years ago. The other thing we looked at was some wide shoulders on higher volume roads that maybe don't always get done on the regular cycles. So the first section of road we did was a section of State Road 63 in west central Indiana. It's located near Illinois. It's a lower volume, limited access road, which we thought would be a good opportunity for us to do the scrub seal on. And it's about a 4-mile section of road. We actually used 2 different emulsions on this section. We used the HFRS2P on the south end, and then we used our regular AE90S on the north end. As you can see, 2 years later, 2.5 years later, there's not a big difference between the 2 sections. I can tell you when we were doing the construction of the job, though, and actually applying the material, the high float rapid set material did appear to look better during the initial construction. A few weeks later, the AE90S maybe looked a little bit better, but 2.5 years later, you really can't tell a difference. So I think both materials worked well for us. I took this photo just to kind of show the transverse cracking that we have on the section of road. So we only did the driving lane. We left the northbound driving lane. We left the passing lane alone. And you can see where the transverse crack is sealed up. So it is doing its job. It has good texture. So overall, it was a really good job for us. The next, we did 4 small communities. So the first one was the town of Newtown. It was done in August of 2020. So we waited until our chip seal program was done before we started our scrub seal program. So that's something I'll talk about a little bit later, maybe moving forward, looking at that a little differently. But we used our QA13 crushed dolomite once again, AE90S. It's about 0.4 of a mile. Overall, it was a decent job. It was the first job we did in a small town, so there were some challenges that we didn't really think of that I'll discuss in the end. The next town we did is a town located about 20 miles away, Hillsboro. This one had street parking, and it was a little bit more populated than Newtown, so we did have some issues there with the public. The dust, and I'll cover all that at the end as well. But same materials once again, it was about 0.4 of a mile. Overall, pretty good job. Then we did 136, which is another town east of Hillsboro. This one, we had some rain come at the end of the job, which did affect it a little bit. It's about 3/4 of a mile in length. You can kind of see it's the oil's maybe a little bit heavier here, not as much texture, but the friction's still good on the road, so and the road's sealed up. The last road, or the last small town we did, which is the one I'm going to spend the most time with, the town of Kingman. It was pretty wide. There's street parking for about half a mile through the town. The road section's about a mile in length. But since it was our last job, we had learned a lot from the previous 3 that we had done. Turned out really well. I want to show this picture because one of the things we learned is we did our chip seal program first, and then we did our scrub seal. And we kind of avoided doing chip seals through towns because larger stone, and didn't want to deal with the public perspective of it. But as you can see, the line, one side of the road was chip sealed, the west end is chip sealed, the east end was scrub sealed. They look the same pretty much today. So not a huge difference, even though we used a smaller stone, you can tell the gradation difference. But overall, I think if we can do it over again, we would just chip seal through the town and not worry about switching our operation to the scrub seal. So the 5 road sections that we did, our costs varied quite a bit. Still, it was pretty affordable, but a lot of it was just the mobilization. So we were doing 4/10 of a mile here and 3/4 of a mile there. A lot of that time was just getting set up, and before you know it, the operation's over. So on average, we're running about $1.35 a square yard for our scrub seals, which when you compare it to our chip seal, it's about $1.50 a square yard. So it's a little bit cheaper, but definitely a good tool in the toolbox. But I think moving forward, at least for my district, we're focusing more on chip seals and maybe chip sealing through some of those small towns. So the part I'm going to spend the most amount of time on here is just lessons learned and tips to remember. So the first thing is building a really good construction plan, making sure that you're really thinking about everything and then communicating that plan. So we, dealing with small towns and small town politics, we were wanting to make sure that everybody knew it was coming, had plenty of notice. So we had plenty of social media posts. We had flyers made that we gave to local businesses, and a few of these smaller communities had newspapers that we, like a weekly newspaper that we'd put notification of it, so people knew that the project was coming and kind of what the anticipated effects of it would be. We also tried to coordinate with our local officials, which was easier said than done. A lot of these small communities don't have full-time officials. They're doing other jobs during the day. So we wanted to make sure though they understood our plan. So when they get asked questions, they can effectively communicate what we're doing. Probably the biggest issue that we had though was dust. So we're used to using a crushed gravel that obviously has been cleaned. With the crushed dolomite, there was considerably more dust, and that was an issue for us. People were outside during construction with garden hoses hosing their houses off in protest. So I think moving forward, maybe going back to crushed gravel because it works very well for us. We also had a water truck available that a couple of the smaller towns, we actually sprayed the road down when we would broom to try to keep the dust down. A lot of prep work that kind of goes back to the construction plan ahead of the job, making sure that we were covering drains, having a vector, leaf blowers, and street sweeper available, since a lot of these communities did have curbs. And people that maintain their yards, we would go out after we did the scrub seal, blow off their drive approaches, blow any stone that may have gotten in their grass out with the leaf blowers, take our brooms and windrow it along the curb line, then take a vector through and actually pick up the stone, and then follow it with a light pass of our street sweeper to pick up any remaining stone to just kind of keep it in better condition than we found it in. One thing that we didn't really plan for, we had hooked up the scrubber, we had made switches in the yard, but when we actually out there doing the scrub seal, it took a little bit more time than we thought, and pulling the scrubber out of the emulsion to make the switch and then hook up the new one and then backing it up, that emulsion has started to break, and when we'd start brooming again, it had a tendency to ball up on us. So making sure those switches are as efficient as possible, I think, is something we definitely learned after the first go around. Something else that seems pretty minor or common sense, but it's really not. The scrubber width's not automatic. We're used to a variable width chip spreader. So we can't fine tune adjustments. So if you need 6 more inches of emulsion, you have to throw down another 2-foot section of the broom. And that 2 feet could be over in the grass. It could be over the center line of the road. So really planning out how you're going to spray and make those passes to ensure you're doing a good job. The other thing, if you're not doing a full width of the scrubber, weight distribution was an issue. So when you start folding up, that puts more pressure on the one side. So the broom or the scrubber had a tendency to push down on the broom bristles on one end and maybe raise a little bit on the other. So that took some adjustments in the field that we weren't quite prepared for when we went into it. Not to overspray the emulsion. This is something, every road's a little different, and our application rate, we'd start out at a known application rate, and by the time we were done, we usually tweaked it quite a bit to make sure we had enough emulsion on the front end of those brooms, but also maintaining a wet edge. Because like I said, once it started to get tacky, it did cause some issues for us. Minimize back into the distributors. Sometimes when you're doing the operation, those distributors, if they're not paying attention, they can get well in front of the chip spreader. So there's a lot of starting and stopping. So we try to keep that distributor operator going at a good enough speed and where he didn't have to back up very often to overlap his passes when he'd take off again. I think planning distributor passes was critical as well. So a lot of these towns varied in width quite a bit. And it kind of goes back to building a good construction plan, knowing where the pulls are going to be and making sure that you're planning for, if you need a 14-foot pull, do you do a 10-foot pass and a 4-foot pass, or do you do an 8-foot pass and a 6-foot pass, to make sure that you're getting good coverage, but also you want to make sure you're leaving an edge that's not covered in stone, because with a chip seal, you could just overlap it. With a scrubber being out there, you're actually pulling in that material. So if you actually cover your emulsion fully with stone, and you try to scrub it with another pass after with the emulsion, you're going to pull that stone. It's just going to create a mess, right? So you want to make sure you're being very methodical with how you're making your passes. And the last thing is not to be afraid of failure. We learn a lot more from our failures than our victories, and I think that's something we kind of picked up on. The first time we did was probably not our best. It was probably our worst, but our last time was by far our best. So I'm just kind of gaining that knowledge as you move on. So with that, I am open for questions at the end.
Thanks, Clint. I have a couple of them for you, so be prepared.
Okay.
Finally, let's travel west, far west, to sunny Arizona and hear from Mo Rahman. Mo is currently the technical marketing manager for Ergon. Mo?
Good morning, folks, or good afternoon. Can you hear me okay or see my screen?
Looking great.
Okay, great. Anyway, just a bit about myself, because I failed to send a bio of myself to Patty or John or somebody. My name is Mo Rahman. I work for Ergon Asphalt and Emulsion as a technical marketing manager in the Southwest. So all my experience is from Southwest in a drier climate, hotter climate, not quite like you folks up in Canada, Illinois, Michigan, or Indiana. So it's a little different. My background has been in asphalt since 1997, since I did my master's from University of Nevada, Reno, worked for a contractor, and then I've been in the liquid side of business for the last 15 years or so, or almost 18 years actually. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what we think about scrap seal and what that is. And one thing I would say is, I think it's a great tool. It's one of the best pavement preservation tool that you can have, but it needs to have the right job, right time, and the right treatment or right emulsion. Well, with that, I always like to show you everybody this pavement preservation condition index curve. Me being an engineer, I always like, numbers and charts and whatnot. And what that shows is basically the life of the pavement, um, indicating this, indicated by this red line. So you typically asphalts are designed for, between 10 and 15 years, maybe more like 18 years. So first 10 years, 75% of the pavement life, you're going to lose a 40% drop in quality. And then the next 40%, you lose them in about 5 years or so. So we want to do all of our pavement preservation when we're in this timeline. So basically, in the first 10 years or so, and scrap seal is being one of them. So what's a scrap seal? I know everybody in front of me, they've talked about it. So there's going to be a lot of overlapping, which is okay. I mean, we need to know what that what this is, rather than not knowing what that is. Yeah. So it's scrub seal is nothing more than an emulsion placement scrubbed by a broom, as you guys have seen so far, with a layer of aggregate would be sprayed and rolled, achieving 60 to 70% embedment. So it's basically a chip seal where you have the emulsion being broomed by a set of brooms behind a distributor. Typically, we like to promote, or we like to supply a polymer modified rejuvenating emulsion for scrap seal. And like I said, it basically, with the help of the broom, we push the emulsion down to the cracks. And of course, it adds significant design life to the pavements. Just want to show you a quick picture from one of our projects in, I think this is in, down south in Mississippi or Alabama area. Out there, you can see the distributor and hooked up to a, and the broom is hooked up to the distributor. A little smoky right here. Maybe the material was a little bit on the hot side. And back here, you can see the chip box spraying the chips in a uniform manner. A quick slide about the benefits of scrap seals. Of course, it maintains and preserves the pavements and extends the life of the pavement up to 8 to 10 years. I would say at least 8 years if it's put down right and it's on the right job. And it utilizes the positive aspects of a chip seal and slows the propagation of a reflective cracking because it's a mass crack sealer, as you know. And if you can fill those cracks with a polymerized emulsion, hopefully, and I use the term hopefully because cracks always come up to the top no matter what, but it will at least slow down the cracks going up to the top. And one other thing, chip seal emulsion or the scrap seal emulsions are typically more workable and less sensitive than a slurry or micro seal. And of course, it's a very cost-effective approach than a mill and fill overlay. Yeah. One thing that we always tell our customers, our agency folks, or anybody that you need to select the right project for scrap seal. Just because it's a bad road, scrap seal may not be the right approach for that. There are 3 pictures here. The one on the top, you can see there's some bit of a flushing going on and some cracks, which is a perfect candidate for a scrap seal. The one on the left, a lot of alligator cracking, so indicating the structural failure. And this would be a very good candidate for scrap seal because you don't see a lot of potholes or delamination or anything like that. And the one on the right, and the block cracking, quite a bit, and longitudinal cracking, and of course, they are pre-treated by the agency, so it is also a good candidate for a scrap seal. What about these 2 pictures? I would not put a scrap seal on these 2 roads. The picture one on the left, a lot of delamination. Basically, the asphalt is just peeling up. The top layer is peeling up with a lot of alligator or fatigue cracking going on. So this is not a good candidate for a scrap seal. The one on the right, significant bleeding going on. You're not going to be able to fix this road by any pavement preservation treatment. scrap seal, of course, not even a question. So what do we have to do? Mill and fill. Yeah, it's going to be costly, but the way these two roads are, you're not going to be able to fix it with a scrap seal. Emulsion, since I work for an emulsion supplier or a hot mix binder supplier, I always like to show people what emulsion is. It's a system with 2 or more non-miscible liquids. We have emulsion all around us in our daily lives. Butter, yogurt, milk, mayonnaise, or any oil and water mixture is going to be an emulsion. And a couple of emulsion that we like people to use: CMS1PC and PMRE. CMS1PC stands for cationic, medium set, polymerized, and C is for chip seal or scrap seal, in this case. And PMRE would be, polymer modified rejuvenating emulsion. Out west or southwest, people meaning the agencies, local agencies, even the states, they use these two type of emulsion quite a bit. Yeah. Just a quick sentence regarding how we manufacture emulsion. If you look at this beaker, you got a oil indicated by this yellow mark, and then emulsifier, the red, and the water is the blue. What we do is in our facilities using a high shear mill, or you can look at it as like a kitchen whisk. If you put this oil emulsifier and water through this high shear mill or the kitchen whisk, you would see this oil particles, which is this yellow rounded particles, stay suspended in the water and with the help of the emulsifier. And that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to keep those oil or asphalt particles suspended in the emulsion, so the emulsion can be sprayed or mixed with aggregate at a lower temperature. That's basically it. Aggregate, we always like people to focus on the aggregates. It's a big deal. What type of aggregate that is? Is it a slag? Is it a natural stone? What type of shape are they? Is it cubical or rounded? Of course, we do not want anybody to use any rounded aggregate because it tends to roll once you put down, and with the traffic, it tends to roll and come off the road. The gradation is important for scrap seal or chip seal aggregate. We want a uniform gradation, basically one size. Cleanliness is definitely important. We do not want high sand equivalent on the finer particle of the aggregate, which is the number 200 sieve. And of course, toughness and soundness, how hard the rock is or how soft the rock is. We can figure that out by, LA abrasion machine. And the soundness is indicative of how it's going to react with aggregate underneath or environment underneath with the salt being present. And of course, the absorption is important too. We do not want to use a highly absorptive aggregate for scrap seal or chip seal for that matter. Yeah. Just a couple of pictures. One on the left is a natural crushed aggregate, and one on the right is a slag type aggregate, which is a synthetic. Just a quick video of one of the projects. This is from a New Mexico that I took using my iPhone. Just want to show you. Let's see if it runs okay. Yeah, one of the things that we always recommend or suggest, we actually supply one of our reps who would be walking by that broom all day long, just to make the adjustments depending on the shape of the aggregate, shape of the roadway, texture of the roadway, and the way the roads are built. You may have to push the broom down a bit. You may have to move up the broom, or adjust the pressure depending on the super elevation, depending on the vertical curve or horizontal curve. Yeah. And if we have time, I do have one other video. It's actually I don't mean it to be a promotional video, but it's actually put together by our communication department, and it actually shows a fairly decent way of scrap seal operation, and with some with some writings on it. Yeah, let's see. I think it will play. I don't think you folks are hearing any music or sound. One of the things that, in the beginning, you could see right in front of the broom, we would like people to have a wave. It's right here. This wave, it's very important. So you're not pushing too much emulsion or too less of an emulsion. And you would see the cracks, how they're being filled if it's done right. Yeah. See the wave again in front of the broom? It's very important. Yeah. And we always welcome people to use a cape seal, which is no more than a chip seal, conventional chip seal or a scrap seal, and then you can put down a micro or slurry seal to make it a cape seal. And that's been very successful in the southwest part of the United States. People love to have that. You can even put down a hot mix overlay on top of that scrap seal. Yeah. Here's my contact info, email, and the phone number. I would love to answer any questions. And this is it. I'm done, folks.
All right, thanks, Mo. I appreciate your time.
Thank
Well,
you.
we've come to the question and answer session of our webinar this afternoon. I've got a couple of questions that have been sent over. I'd like to start again at the county level with Brent. And we write, the turning movements. Is there anything, Brent, you can do to mitigate those turning movements? I noticed on the photograph it was farming. Is it farm equipment, or do standard tires take out that material as well? Brent, is there anything we can do to mitigate some of those turning movements in the scrub seals?
Well, we noticed that where there's the heavy traffic and it's a lot of the truck turning movements, it can be whether Tuscola County is primarily agricultural, but if it's a commercial facility with a lot of in and out traffic, it's just those tire turning movements will do it. High impact intersections will also go through and we'll see it lost. We did a scrub seal last year on one of our primary all-season roadways, and it's a main truck route coming out of a gravel pit. And the amount of trucks coming out on a daily basis was enough that we had to stop our work, and literally we pulled off the job after only doing one lane of the 2-lane roadway. And everyone was concerned about what all that truck traffic was doing to our scrub seal after we just placed it down. And we've gone back now after a year later, and we're going to go through and finish up the southbound lane because it is held up so well because it's a straight thoroughfare. But no, I haven't come across anything to do to really mitigate the turning movements that we see.
Okay, a follow-up question. You mentioned patching. Do you see any benefit in patching several months before doing the scrub seal, or have you looked into that at all, Brent?
We will literally, if we have enough advance notice, we'll patch a month or so in advance. But we go through and we'll be patching the week before they get out there. We'll go mill out if it's cold patch, we'll mill that out. Some of them are just where we have depressions where the roadway and shoulder has settled out over time. So we'll wedge beforehand to get a smoother ride for the motoring public. That way then the scrub seal just continues on. But no, we patched early and we patched right up to right before they've done it.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Tyler, let's switch to you. And this may be redundant, but we have several questions. I'm trying to put them all together. Why, Tyler, and I think Mo, you can chime in as well, do you use a CRS slow set when Mo just mentioned a medium set? Is it because you get better penetration of the cracks with that slow setting time? Tyler?
Yeah, that would be, so this SPU was done by my predecessor, but I think in the, yeah, it has time to stand up, it has time to penetrate the cracks, and then get stone embedment. But I'll let Mo touch on the emulsion because he's more of an expert in that area.
Mo, why don't you take it from there?
I know I've indicated that, we like people to use a medium set. And the reason being is just to give it a little time to make sure that, it doesn't set up before the aggregate hits the emulsion. And at times we see the chip box a little further behind. Yeah, we don't like that. But I think having that medium set helps. And if it is a conventional chip seal, we recommend a rapid set, a cationic rapid set, CRS instead of a CMS, just because of that set time issue. There is nothing more to it. It's basically, that's what it is. Can you use a CRS in a scrub seal? You can, but if the demulsibility is high, which is basically, higher the demulsibility, your material is going to set right away. As soon as you put it down on the ground, within seconds, it sets up. So aggregate will not have time to go underneath. Yeah. So the medium set really helps because by the time the roller hits the aggregate, it's still somewhat soft, so you can push it down a little bit, and then get that embedment 60 to 80%. I hope I answered that question.
You did. You have a follow-up from me that's going to sound foolish, and I apologize in advance. Everybody seems to be obsessed with cationic. Is that, Mo, does that really absolutely have to have a cationic?
No, you don't. The reason being is I have to go back to my professor, Dr. John Abs. He was my teacher back in the day, almost 25, 30 years ago. He said most of our aggregate, at least in the Southwest or the West, have a negative charge on the surface. Okay, and when you have a negative charge on the surface of the aggregate, and if your emulsion is cationic, which is positively charged, they just like each other better and they get together and they stay together, if it makes sense. Yeah. However, having said that, there are some aggregates I've seen works really well with a anionic type emulsion too. But most of the time, 80–90% of the time, our emulsions are cationic, and they seem to work better. Even with other treatments like a slurry seal or micro seal, most of our emulsions are cationic because of the same reason. They just work better with the aggregates that we have in the South and the Sun Belt areas, Southeast and the West. Yeah.
Thanks, Mo. Going back to Brent and then shifting to Clint, all of you have been talking, but the question posed twice was, we don't ever talk about traffic counts. Brent, what was your traffic counts on your pilot on 141? And then furthermore, Clint, is there a cutoff for traffic counts and even considering a scrub seal in lieu of anything else? We'll start with Brent.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Traffic counts for the Tuscola County Road Commission, we're doing scrub seals on roads that have 200 vehicles a day or less. And we're also doing it on routes that are 1,600 to 2,000. And I want to say a couple of our primary roads that we've actually scrub sealed are up into the 2,500 vehicles, and that's high for us for our primary all season roadway. The state trunk lines have a higher rate than that, but we're hitting the full range.
Clint, what's your thoughts on that? Any cutoffs?
So, yeah, so for our State Road 63, the first one we did, which was a divided highway, limited access, it's about 2,400 ADT, I believe. Our small towns were all roughly around 1,000 to 2,000 in that range. I think it's just about being able to manage the traffic. So one of the things that we like to do when we chip seal, especially if we think there's going to be a traffic count issue, is we'll actually set up a detour for the construction until we get it sealed and at least the initial pass of brooming after the chip seal. So it's just, I don't know that we really have a set cutoff. As much as if we can manage the traffic around it, we'll do that and then still try to chip seal those roads.
Cool. And the final I just got here, I just didn't read it until right minute. Turnaround time. You just mentioned that. You went right on this next question. What can I tell my politician I can release traffic back onto this scrub seal?
So for us, for most of our jobs, what we'll do is we'll actually have a crew come in at night and do the sweeping. So we'll chip seal during the day. Usually 8 hours is a good window. So we'll finish up in the evening and then bring a crew back in at midnight, and they'll start where we started that morning. So you're looking at probably 18 hours or so from that initial sweeping to when we placed it the day before. So that's kind of been our go-to. And then after that initial, we'll usually still keep we'll have a quote unquote soft closure out there. We'll have barricades on the end to try to, have traffic go other directions if they are so inclined, which a lot of times they aren't. But that's usually our standard is within 24 hours, we typically allow traffic back on it without having any major issues after we get that initial sweeping done.
Sweet. This next one's from me. And Clint, you can field it to begin with. We have a temp spec here at MoDOT. Nobody mentioned time of the year. Does it matter? And do temperatures matter? Because some of your pictures look like they didn't have any leaves on the tree.
Yeah, so those pictures were taken like 2 days ago. So that's why a lot of those pictures look that way. So yeah, we do. Our spec actually, I believe, is the end of September. In our district, we don't go past the end of August though. So we typically start in June. We start a little bit early just because we get funding released a little bit early. So we usually start in mid-June, if not early June, depending on the workload that summer. We'll chip seal June, July, August, and then we don't go past August. Maybe for a fog seal, we really want to make sure that chip seal has time to fully cure out before winter. The other thing I'll mention that I did in the presentation is we have a district crew that operates our equipment. They travel the district, so that does help speed up some of our production, having the same operators operate the chip spreader and distributor throughout the whole district. So.
Okay, sounds like a monthly thing. Michigan, you got anything to add on that? Ours is 60 degrees in Missouri, just FYI.
Yeah, Phil, this is Brent. I can go through and comment on it too. Tuscola County, we follow the MDOT specification, and actually our dividing line for the lower peninsula of Michigan is literally runs through the middle of our county. So our start date is May 15th, and we'll run to beginning of September, middle of September. Everything that I've seen is it's not the weather when you place it, it's what the weather's going to be in 30 days. And it's how that emulsion and that aggregate is going to slowly cure and set itself out. And so it's really looking to see that forecast, because we've stopped early in August just because September was looking poor for weather. I've also kind of pushed the limits, and I've actually chip sealed late into September because we were looking at good weather still for the next 30 days. So it's really looking at that 30-day forecast out.
Thanks, buddy. Question from Mo. Are rejuvenating emulsions worth the extra cost? Of course they are. If we used our standard chip seal emulsion, we could save money on our scrub seal jobs. The only difference being the emulsion is broomed into the surface. I guess it's a question. Mo, comments?
Yeah, very good question. The cost is not super high. If we were to ask for a rejuvenating emulsion, yeah, it is a little high, but it is worth the extra cost. The reason being is rejuvenator helps to liven up the pavement a bit. I mean, does it go back to the way when it was built 20 years ago, 30 years ago? No, but it does help to give it a little more a life to the pavement or to the binder, existing binder of the existing pavement. And what is the second part of the question?
It was more of a statement. It just
Oh,
says if we used our standard chip seal emulsion, we could save money on our scrub seal jobs.
okay.
The difference
Yeah,
being it's groomed.
you're going to save a little bit, not a whole lot, but it is worth the extra cost. Yeah.
Hey, Phil,
6 months.
this is Brent again. I know you were asking Mo, but we've gone through and we've turned it around, and we've also utilized our scrub emulsion and just utilized that in an application for a single as a single chip seal. So the roads that we really can't pull a broom on because we're going to go through and the profile or the cross section is really not the greatest, but we wanted those benefits of that scrub seal emulsion. We've just utilized that emulsion, but in a single chip application, and we have a 3-mile stretch, a success story where we did the same thing and it turned out beautifully. We just didn't utilize the broom, but we had that scrub emulsion.
Great.
Perfect, perfect segue. Clint, again, I noticed you have a bright green brooms on your chips, your scrub seals, while everybody else's seems to be the standard ones found at Walmart. Is there any particular reason that your brooms are bright green?
Probably the vendor's name is Green's Broom, so I'm sure it's just marketing for them. But yeah, it's a company in Indianapolis that we bought our broom from. So
Sweet. I'll stay with you for a final one. Sorry, there's one more. Clint, Indiana says they use natural stone, yet Michigan says they buy their slag from Indiana. Why are you not using your own slag?
the biggest reason is just the trucking. It kind of gets to be an issue of getting it hauled and the pricing. So we've had good luck with natural stone, so we just stuck with it.
All right, cool. I got one more unless you all want to send me any more questions. I'm still monitoring the chat, but the last question I have is, are there any adjustment in the distance between the distributor truck and the chip spreaders? Will it be the same as a normal chip seal, the distance between the distributor truck and the spreader? I don't know. Brent?
Phil, yeah. One, and that actually was what I was just trying to type into the chat here for you, is really to work closely with your contractor that's doing the work, and because your distance is going to be affected by the type of emulsion that you're using, but also the the time of the year it is, the weather that it is, and what your application rate is. It's all those pieces are tied together. And every road is going to go through and absorb that emulsion just a little bit different, which is going to affect your application rate, which is going to then go through and affect the distance that they're at. So really work with those guys to go through to get that correct application rate. You're not going to always hit a 0.4 on every single road for your emulsion. You might find that some of those roads are really more closer to a 0.39 versus 0.42 for maybe a more porous road. So you got to take that into account when you're looking at it.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is Tyler. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mo.
I'm sorry, this is Mo. If I could add to that, I guess the question was the distance between the distributor and the chip box, right? And I guess the question is, it depends, and all those things that previous panelists just indicated, depending on the time, depending on the condition of the pavement. You may need to be right next to the distributor, or you can have a little space between that too. So I guess it depends. Yeah. And also one other thing, if I could add to the broom question, those green broom that we have had pretty good luck with, and I think they come from Green's Broom. That's the company that make them. Instead of getting it from Home Depot or Walmart, I think we have had pretty good luck with those green broom. If that helps.
It does. Do you have any more comments, Tyler?
I do. I just wanted to clarify what I said earlier. Our emulsion at MDOT would probably be considered a medium to slow set in the grand scheme of things. And we've tried rapid sets in the past and had bad luck with those. From, I think, a constructability standpoint, was the #1 complaint. The the distributor truck getting too far from the chips, and your emulsion is not accepting the stone embedment. So yeah, so our emulsion is not a rapid set in the, I guess, in the technical sense. And in fact, our quick set, I'm putting into this in quotes, our quick set fog seal isn't truly a quick set either. It'd be more of like a medium set. So I think it's some verbiage is unclear, but yeah, I just want to throw that out there. And that's mainly to keep the distance, to have a little bit of leeway, because constructability issues arise when we have those emulsions that we got to be chasing right behind the distributor truck with the chips. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks.
Thanks. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close up the chat comments. I really appreciate all of you sending me all those great questions. And again, I extend my heartfelt thanks to the panelists that we've had to deliver us some really good discussion. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Chair Andre for some final thoughts. Nicole?
Great, thanks, Phil. And thanks so much to our panelists today. That was a great discussion. I've got, like, I don't know, 4 pages of notes here. So thanks so much for your participation and just generosity in your time to be with us today. And a shout out to our task group that has been pulling these webinars together. So for Phil for moderating, Stephanie Uyghur, Rob Green, Patty Han, and John Sanger for, kind of putting these together. So what would you guys like to see next? If you could just fill out the poll here as some potential topics for our next Skillshare webinar. And if you have suggestions that aren't in that list, please just throw it into the chat. And I would like to do a quick plug for our partnership meeting that's coming up in September. We will be in person once again, yay, St. Louis, Missouri, September 12th to the 14th. So if you want to put that in your calendar now, and our invite should be out in the next few weeks for the meeting. So that's all we had for you guys today. Thanks once again for joining us, and safe travel.
Have a good day and goodbye.
Thank you, folks. One of the best webinars I've attended.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.